Thank you, Kristin. Oh, Jesus.
Yes. Hi, I'm Renee Spell. I grew up in the carpenter community out in West Cary now, and I went to Campbell College back in the day, now a university, and worked in textiles with Cotton Incorporated, and eventually owner of Elegant Stitches. That was a 31-year-old business here, now retired. And we have 2 children, both who are Paul Harris Fellows, and 4 little grandsons who are Paul Harris Fellows. And that's who I work for now, those kids. So, anyway, but I've been a member of this club since April of 2005 or 6, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
So anyway, happy to be here.
Thank you. You're up.
I'm Jerry Miller, and I've been a charter member. I'm a charter member of Rotary, and I moved to Cary in 1957, and I was going to NC State, and I was every weekend I drive to Sanford through Cary, a little community, a little village, to go home to our parents for food. And so we had to go all the way through Raleigh on Hillsborough Street, came out on the street to Cary, and then through Apex to take number 1 all the way to Sanford. Sanford's where I'm from. So my wife Jean and I, one Saturday, I told Jean, I said, you know, we need to find a little place in Cary to live, because I'm getting tired of running through Cary every time I go through in Apex. So we came out one Sunday and went looking for a place to stay, moving the house, and we found one, and it had a sign on the property that said for sale, and I had a telephone number on it. So I didn't know Ralph at all, and so it was a telephone number to Buck Jordan, George Jordan's daddy. So I said, I think that drugstore has got a telephone. So I went in the drugstore and met Ralph. He's the first person I ever met in Cary.
You could have done worse.
I won't tell the whole story, but anyway, you probably heard it. So anyway, Ralph, I'm jumping ahead of myself. You want to know about my family? My wife and I went to high school together, and we've been married 68 years. And we went to school together, of course, and she went to Peace, and I went to NC State. But I went to Elon College first to play football, and then I went to Elon, Mars Hill. I wanted to go to NC State, but they wouldn't take me because of my craze at Mars Hill and Elon. So,
What did you do for work, Jerry?
what?
What did you do for work?
I was drawing. So I never did anything but draw. And I don't know how long you stay on the subject, but anyway, I ended up getting out of Mars Hill and coming to Cary. coming to NC State. And that's how I got started into coming home. So we've been in Cary a long time, since 1957, and met this gentleman here. And that's the best thing I ever did, was come to Cary, because it was just perfect for what we wanted. We wanted to stay close around. And I started, we had an old man in town called R.O. Higa. A lot of you don't know who I'm talking about, but some do. And Mr. Higa used to meet down at Rogers Restaurant every morning, except maybe Saturday or Sunday. And he found out I was going to State School of Design. And he said, "Jerry, I want you to draw me some of these historical sites of Cary." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I don't know which ones they are." He said, "I know what they are. Hey, get in my car and I'll take you around And I had a little Kodak Brownie camera, black and white. And I took that camera with me and took photographs of all these old houses and buildings in Cary that he wanted me to do. And when I could build up a big collection of drawings, I wanted to put out a book. So my next door neighbor, Tom Bird, was a writer in the agriculture department at North Carolina State. And so I went over to talk to Ralph. I said, Ralph, I want to put out, I showed him the drawings. I had about 35. I said, I want to write a little caption under each one of these buildings and tell where they were and when they were built and so forth. And he did, we did, and that's it.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
We'll pass
He
that.
didn't know when to stop talking. I came to Cary with Daphne in 1957. She was our high school sweethearts, and we came from Fuquay, went to Chapel Hill, got our degrees, and so then I was in pharmacy for 69 years. I was a pharmacist in Fuquay for 2 years, where I grew up and went through pharmacy to the drugstore down there. And 67 years, so I was in pharmacy for 69, and we had finally quit. But anyway, it's been an interesting life, and I've got 2 boys, 6 grandchildren, and 6.5 great-grandchildren.
That's what you should have done.
I'm Pat Hudson. I grew up in Smithfield and could not wait to get away from the farm. So I went to Chapel Hill to the School of Nursing, graduated there, and when we came to Cary in 1970, Dan was the first veterinarian in Cary, and they were so excited, and there were fewer than 6,000 people here. So it has changed a lot. Both children grew up here in Cary. And I have another first. The first social event I ever went to in Cary was at Ralph's house.
That Rotary was a Rotary party.
It was a Rotary party.
What
And so-
year was that? Do you remember?
Probably 1970. That's
Okay.
when we moved to Cary.
Nice.
But
Very nice.
I love living here. I live in Templeton now, and I have 2 kids. One who's a veterinarian and one who used to be a fireman. So,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you. Get that done.
Ralph told me to keep my hands off it.
We're going to hold the microphone for you going forward, so we'll have the control.
Well, we're going to start with the first question.
That these questions came from you all. So we did a survey a couple of months ago asking what you wanted to know from our history of Rotary. And so a lot of these questions came from that survey. So thank you for asking those. But Ralph, I'm going to start with you. Please share a little of your personal story, including how you became involved in Rotary, where the idea came from. You're the founder here representing the club today. And then what happened? Like, when did that occur? How did that get started?
Actually, one day, Dick Ladd, who we'll call our founder, worked at Hobbies with his father-in-law, and Jean was the only child, and she was working. So they were there. But anyway, he walks in the drugstore one day and says, I have been contacted by somebody from West Raleigh Rotary Club, and they think that perhaps we need a Rotary Club in Cary, and they would like to be our sponsor. And I said, well, what's required? He said, well, we'll have to get 25 people to join, sign up, and agree to meet once a week. And we'll have dinner and a once-a-week meeting. I said, that is very daunting. At that point, in 64, only thing we had in Cary was the downtown street. There was no mall, there was nothing. Only thing. And I said, well, never find 25 people, 25 men, no women then, only men, 25 men to agree to meet every Tuesday for lunch and have a meeting. It's not going to happen. But we started trying, and we got Jim Adcock, and we got a bunch of Joe Janney and all the founders. And it took us a year, and we got 25 people signed up, and we had a installation banquet, which was a big deal at the
Valentine's restaurant.
no, and at the faculty club in Raleigh, at State, but that's where they met. So we had A lot of us were formal, and we had talks. And what was so sad about it, we did interview each one of us members to say something, and it's on tape, and he's lost the tape. But anyway, it was a big event, and so it all started with Dick and the big idea that it could be done, and it was done. And Dick was the first president, and I was the first vice president, and in those days, the vice president was in charge of all the programs. So for 1 year, I had to come up with a program once a week. That was a tough, but you know, it changed, we got a committee and all this stuff. But that's the beginning. And it was at Rogers Restaurant.
One of the things I didn't say was that I was a Rotarian long before I became a Rotarian. And this club did not have women for a very long time, and I decided I was asked because I was the least threatening person that they knew, and because I had been a Rotarian and had cooked so many meals for the people here. But my husband Dan was president for a while, and so we enjoyed all the times that we've had in Rotary.
Let me put a PS on that. Rotary International decreed that we would have ladies in Rotary. And of course, it was a men's organization at that time, and it was not very popular with a lot of our members. And in fact, we actually lost 2 or 3 members because they wanted to be in only a men's group. But let me say, it's the biggest blessing we've ever had when we had these women come in, because they did a lot of the work.
Same topic. So 1989 is when women were allowed to join Rotary, and then Pat joined in 1999. So 10 years later, after the idea kind of settled in with our club, Pat was a member. But Pat, you weren't the first member, is that right?
Mrs. Few.
Mrs. Few.
She didn't stick it out.
Okay, she didn't have thick skin. Perfect, perfect. Well, Pat, if you will you share some things that you remember that were positive experiences that you had throughout your time in the Rotary Club? It could be back when you first started, or really could be any time between now and then.
Who are you talking to?
Pat, our female representative.
Well, when it was very family-oriented, I think when we first joined, we had 2 small kids. The Christmas party was here at McGregor. Santa came, and I'm not sure who Santa was, but it might have been Herman Street. But we all had presents for the kids, and it was quite a good thing. Rode around afterwards, but it seemed that children were a big part of what we did then. And I never knew who the men were that left after I joined. But it's been a wonderful experience. I learned a lot. I've met a lot of wonderful people, have had good experiences going to the Dominican Republic, and wouldn't trade all these 29 years for anything.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So Patsy Johnson and I work together. She's my boss, so say good things on the way out as she leaves. But she referenced the Christmas party and her family growing up with her son and it being a family affair. Do any of y'all remember that as well with your families that you might want to share some
All the
thoughts?
children. It was always a big day. We had the Christmas tree, we had salad and everything, and sometimes wasn't at cafeteria in Raleigh, I forgot. Valentine's, I think. And it was always a big deal, and kids enjoyed it. But you know, back then we all had little children. Today we don't.
That's right.
I would tell one story that I always love to tell. I was the 6th president of the Rotary Club, and as Ralph said, this vice president had to get all the programs. And so one day, Bob Struck was the vice president. He got the program, and he got up and I sat back down and called him. I called him Bob to get up and introduce his guest. And I sat down and Bob said, "Our guest today is a friend of mine. I've known him almost all of his life, and he and I have been here and there. We've done this and that, and we just the greatest friends in the world." And I want to give a great welcome from the Cary Rotary Club to
Jeremy.
He couldn't come up with a name. He couldn't call the guy's name.
You weren't listening.
His friend,
Who was his best friend?
hang on here, I'll tell you. He wouldn't let me finish the story. But he kept trying to get this guy to come up with a name. And then he finally said, "What the hell is your name?" So it was a good friend. I don't know who he was, but that was one funny thing. And another funny thing, we used to have John Ogle in here. He's supposed to still be here, but he was a funny dude. He used to have a gong. He built a gong, and he had a bell, a thing that beat the gong. And if the program was not good any good, he would beat that gong and stop the program midway. If the program sounded like it was not any good, it gong. So that was
Her counsel, didn't he?
yeah,
Oh, that's stressful.
I know a lot of good stories.
I'm glad we don't have that going anymore. That would be bad. Right. Well, so Renee, I'm going to turn to you. You've been involved well before I was a member, so you've constantly been here. I see you at lots of different places, cleaning up trash and doing walks and doing chili. What has continued to drive your involvement in Rotary, and what are your key takeaways from the service that you've done throughout your time here?
Thank you, Kristin. First of all, I'm going to correct something. I do have a husband, Jesse, of 44 years. I just got noticed. I didn't mention him earlier. But I don't know, there's just the continuity in this club of the things that we know happen every week, and we all are here to make that happen. The continued effort of following up with literacy and food insecurity here in our area. It's hard to think that as affluent as Cary is in this area, that there are people who are hungry. And when we do our chili dinners and things like that, even though, not all of it is staying here, I know that there's a portion here. And I get back to some of the things we've done that really resonated with that was during the pandemic, and we shut down. We weren't doing anything. And Mary Cam called me one day and she said, "I got an idea. I think if we buy 6,000 pounds of rice, we can really make a difference in the community." I said, "Where are you going to put it?" She said, "Well, you've got a nice big garage." So that's where it went. But you all came together and took a big bag of rice home and portioned it down. We were able to supply the Interfaith Food Shuttle and Dorcas Ministries over that. And it was very humbling when you stop and think about a cup of rice will really feed 4. So you can do the math. Out of 6,000 pounds of rice, we went a long way. And things like that just stick with me. When we're doing little small things, they're wonderful, but once in a while that big opportunity comes, and we did it. Is that answer?
You did, and you answered it really well. Thank you.
But that keeps me going.
Awesome.
Does anybody else want to add to that as far as the service that you've been involved with and how that keeps you motivated through Rotary? If not, I have more questions. Proceed. Okay. So a lot of our members here are in the retirement age, but they don't act that way. So they sort of act maybe 20, 30 years younger than retirement age. What do you think keeps those members motivated, energized, and active and committed to doing the work with Rotary? And that goes out to anybody that wants to answer it. So anybody have a thought that has come to your mind about what keeps you motivated during your retirement years?
Well, I'll tell you what I preach to all my customers.
If you're going to get old, you've got to stay involved. You've got to keep reading the papers. You've got to know what's going on. Church helps because you have a fellowship. It's not, I preach, never retire and go home and have nothing to do. You'll sit in your rocking chair and you'll probably die. Which happened many times if you have nothing to do. So if anybody's going to retire, I tell you, you have to retire to something. It can be a volunteer job, it can be anything, but do not retire to nothing, and that's what keeps you going.
Perfect. Love that.
Thank
Thank you, Ralph. So this is also a question for anybody that has a thought that comes to mind. Each of you have been involved in bringing younger members to our club. So we have a lot of new faces each year that come through, and 4 of you are instrumental in bringing them here. What do you do to tell that story to our younger generation to get them interested and involved in our Rotary Club? We can also come back to that if you need some time.
Well, you sell them on the service that we do. That's what brings them in.
Service
Things that
above
we do,
self.
Service above self.
Yeah.
And things that we accomplish and the amount of money that we spend on that, that's what they want. They want to get